happening. Then they just woke up, they ran, said it is Al-Shabaab, but that it wasn't in my mind. I just went to check on the electricity where it was. Then within that, because we were used to one entrance between us and the gentlemen, I just saw about 3 people just coming in our hostel. Then they just went toward where the gentlemen, the hostel for gentlemen. Then they say they are Al-Shabaab, they are come to kill and to be killed, but that didn't hit my mind because they are just wearing like the KDF. To me, I thought they are KDF. And so after I had that, I went just back to our hostel. Then I just stood outside to see what is happening. Then within that, the process that we had, that the explosion of the guard, it exceeded. So we had to call some of the gents, and we tell them there is something which is not good. And once now we had our hostel was in the ground floor. Then there was a second floor where now the gentlemen, they can pass from the second floor and come in the ladies' hostel. Some of them, they come. Then we stayed actually around maybe 30 minutes just within the hostel, looking of what is happening. So once we had that the gunshot and that the exploitation of the noise had exceeded, we decided to use the Panya route to the field where it was. Once we just go into the fields, we just see them now, they started shooting us. So we could learn. If we see them, they are just shooting, we could lay down. Then we walk up, we run again. When they shoot us, we just lay down. Then we lay down, then we wake up, then we just walk. Then we arrive at the field where we stayed like for 1 hour. Then they started even following us when we were in the field. Then we had to think the other ways. We need to get out of the field. Then that time our school was fenced by electricity wire. The lack of it, the electricity wasn't there, so it just was the wire. Those who were in the position now to jump to the outside of the school, they get that. But for me, I was not in that position because like when we were going out, you found our crowd was teared out, so I could jump in. The gentlemen that we had them, they assisted us in digging the hole. Then we passed through that to a neighbor. There we found some of the Muslim. In that morning, they said, this is this Garissa. Then they said, the road is going to Buramasalani. This is going to the town. This is going to Buramzuri. So we are wondering, where now are we supposed to go? In the process, we are wondering where we can to go. One of the neighbor just called us and said, you can just come, you stay here for the moments. Once the things they are settled, you will go back to your school.
How many were you that were able to escape?
We were around 20 people. Yeah, within the group I was in.
What happened? So you were in a hostel, of course, with very many more. Why is it that only 20 managed to escape? Is it that the others did not react fast? Is it that they were not aware of what was happening? What do you think happened?
Like my roommates, they just woke up and running. They didn't wait for anything, so they just woke up running, shouting Al-Shabaab. Yeah, some when they saw that, they just woke up and running. So with that, our team which we left behind to see what was happening. Yeah.
Did you know what was going on by the time you were in the field and there was all this shooting going on and you were running? Did you then have an idea of what was happening at that point?
No, I couldn't have, because I just had, like one of our readers said, there is something happening and it is not Al-Shabaab. They are thieves. They have come into our school. So we thought they are thieves and we were just waiting them to cool down, then we can go back to school. Yeah.
Okay.
When you heard the first burst of gunfire, you said you woke up, you were a leader in that hostel, and you wanted to go and just determine what was happening.
Yeah.
What did you actually see?
I see just 3 gentlemen just coming in wearing a KDF uniform. To me, because within the school we are used to stay with KDF, I could trace they are Shabab. I believe they are KDF. Even after I had them saying they are Shabab, they are come to kill and to be killed, I didn't believe they are Shabab.
So the KDF camp was not far from the college?
Yeah, it was not far, and within the school we had some of the KDF. We used to interact with them. They used to stay just around the school.
So were they students, or were they providing some form of protection to the school?
They were providing protection to the school.
How many were they in total?
Sometimes during the day you can find there are 2 or 1.
Okay. Now, did you, for instance, the hostel you were in, how many students were there in your hostel?
We are around, let's say 300.
Around 300.
Yeah.
And how many hostels were there?
2.
There were 2 hostels.
Yeah.
The boys and the girls.
Yeah, the boys and the girls. Then we had another, the hostel, that was for the first years.
For the
hostel,
first years,
yeah.
yes. And that had 300.
Yeah.
And so boys, girls. So for every year, the hostels were divided according to the years that people were in.
Yeah, it was only the first years and second years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Now, when you left the compound and you were given shelter, at what point did you eventually go back to the university?
We didn't go back.
Yes.
We stayed at the neighbor's place until around 7 a.m. where the chief came in and just said our school has been attacked by Al-Shabaab. Then we were taken to the KDF camp at Garissa.
How far away was that camp from your college, from university?
It wasn't such far because sometimes we could walk to the town. So it was just, let's say, maybe 5 kilometers. Yeah.
At the end of this, of course, now you were hearing what has happened back in your college. Many were killed. Reports of 148 were killed. There were all these conflicting reports of what has happened. But by the end of this day, you now came to realize what exactly has happened to your college, that there was an attack. There's a terrorist attack. The people that you saw were actually there, fully intent on killing people. And then hearing that some of the people that you knew have been killed. How did that affect you?
That affected me, psychological and social support. When it's come like one was my friend, and before the attack that night, we had spent our time. Actually, we argued. She could not go to sleep in the second years. If it was possible, we could add sleep with her in our dormitory, but she refused. And after, when we were at the KDF camp, now we started asking, where is so and so? And others, they said, maybe let's wait until evening, we could get a report about her. But when it reached around it was around lunchtime. So one of our friends told us she couldn't make to come and she's normal. So that it was a hard time to believe she's normal. And the way we interacted, because that night we are just doing like our assignment. So that affected my life. Yeah.
Okay.
Now that's where the doctor comes in. There were very many, 700 students held hostage, hearing just gunshots, seeing others being killed. Those that were shot and survived, or those that were injured, they had to go through something to come out of it. What was it? What is it that person goes through?
First of all, Eric, I think that Garissa University College attack needs to be put in the history of this country as one of the saddest events that actually details what radical elements who practice nefarious ideology can do to this country. I was involved in that rescue mission from the word go. I've always been. I'm a forensic psychologist. I think you introduced me as a psychologist. I am a psychologist, but I'm a forensic psychologist, and that's important because the work that I do actually circles around what do you do in event where evil or crime has actually affected people, and how do you help them to recover from that. Now, at that time, the Kenyan government tried to act immediately, and even for those of us in the practice, we tried to act immediately. And I'm coming back to your answer so you can understand where this ties in. So we did a recovery effort, and I think what the government tried to do through the Ministry of Interior, the National Disaster Operations Center at the time, we didn't have so much experience just because Westgate had happened in 2013 September, and the response, as you know, had a lot of issues in it. So 2015 was a bit too soon and too far because Garissa University College was not in the center of Nairobi. So we couldn't have the same kind of speed of the special units at that time. Now I'm a civilian, but I can tell you that probably more could have been done. But then we received the students, I remember that night, and Rosemary was one of them. I remember when we worked together, in fact, we were just talking about it this morning, that they came to Nairobi on a cold, rainy night. I remember that day very well, that second. And the Ministry of Interior was involved, the Ministry of Devolution was involved in bringing them back. But here's our problem. Our problem is that we do not understand terrorism and violent extremism well. Because it's not just about the violence, actually. It's about the terror part of it. And the terror part of it is where the psychological impact of terrorism comes in. The idea that terrorists want you to change your way of life. They want you to be so scared about doing anything that you actually do not end up living your life the normal way. So for Rosemary and her friends, they experienced what I call the most extreme form of human suffering, especially when you witness it happening to your friends. She talked about her friend. And so what happens to them is that, you of course you become scared for your life. And that's the one thing. A lot of them went through what is called post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and being severely traumatized, psychologically traumatized. So nightmares, flashbacks of what has happened. And in fact, I just wanted to say right before when you're asking her what happened, the reason I didn't jump in and say, please don't ask her that, is because I know that Rosemary has gone through psychological support, and she also has, it's been 8 years, and we talked about it. If I thought she hadn't, I would have said, excuse me, can I interject? Because one of the things that you do not want to do when somebody is traumatized is to have them recount the story.
It's a trigger.
It actually takes them back to the situation. The human brain does not distinguish between when you're actually going through the issue or when you're reliving it. You actually go through the same physiological and neurological experiences. So for them, there's the avoidance, there's a re-experiencing of issues, there's a severe anxiety, there's a lack of sleep for some people, there's the addition of sleep for other people, and there's an extreme fear at loud noises. I remember 1998, I think everybody here is old enough to remember that the attack, the bomb blast in Nairobi. And what happened to Kenyans generally after after that. If you had a car backfiring, for instance, Kenyans would get scared and say, we're being attacked, we're under attack. And these attacks are really horrible, Eric, because not only does it affect the students who are in the middle of the attack and who went through it, but anybody who got the reporting in a candid way. So our experience from Westgate probably is where we saw large-scale effect of media on enhancing trauma from attacks. And because you have the reporters in front of the mall. I'm standing here in front of the mall. There's an attack going on. I think journalists sometimes, but we've done a lot of work with the Media Council, where we've spoken to people and journalists, and I think the work you do is very, very great in bringing news to people. But sometimes that work leaves journalists themselves injured
Yep.
psychologically,
Yep.
but then also the people who they bring the news to. Because someone who didn't know what was happening at Westgate or at Garissa in their house and hadn't seen the images did not know what the context might have been. And by them seeing the images especially, and we can report without actually traumatizing people. We can tell them something has happened, the attack has happened. But the moment you show a dead body or you show somebody
The
in deep
suffering, the
yes,
injured.
the human spirit, we're not created to actually take that in. But I know the way the news is, if it bleeds, it leads. But unfortunately for me as a psychologist, I look at it and I say, okay, fine, I understand the freedom of the media and all that. But then there's also that cost we have to think about. So if Rosemary and her colleagues who survived that very heinous attack did not go through some psychological support, which I proudly was part of delivering to them, then I believe that right now their lives would probably be completely in disarray. And I'm not saying that all her colleagues are as well put together as she is right now, but I'm saying that for majority of the ones who went through it, I'm sure with the correct support, they did well. I really want to shout out the DAAD, the German Academic Exchange Service, because they're the ones who saw it fit to actually give a scholarship to Rosemary and her colleagues at Moore University, where they relocated to. And that's where we actually went and met them to do the psychological support.
To start supporting them.
Start supporting them.
Let's take a break, and then we come back. We continue looking into now the 8 years after,
Great.
right?
Yes.
And what happens, the journey through recovery.
Yes.
What it takes and what it means. It's 28 minutes to 8. We have two guests with us in the studio. Dr. Oscar Gedua is a forensic psychologist, and Rosemary Chalo is a survivor of the Garissa University College attack in 2015. It happened on the morning of the 2nd and to the 3rd of April 2015. Looking at it now, 8 years on, what is it? What are the lessons that we learn in terms of coping with trauma? We call this, Dr. Harry, the Minute Maid break.
Yes.
And Ndu will tell you why.
Right. So, I mean, you know this. Sometimes you need a minute to declutter, isn't it?
Totally.
Absolutely. So what Minute Maid says is, you know what? Through the range of fantastic flavors that Minute Maid has on offer, through the day, you need to take a moment where you just breathe. And you can do that with this great refreshment from Minute Maid. It's called an moment. It's a Minute Maid moment, and you can have that through the day. Wake up, through the minute, through the day, and at the end of the day, even while you can go through all the great flavors, apple, orange, mango, and tropical, and have a Minute Maid moment and de-stress.
27 minutes to 8. How are the roads looking like? Let's find out.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's cloudy at 16 in Nairobi, and we'll see highs of 24. We'll see highs of 25 in a partly sunny Nakuru, and it's 16 at mostly cloudy in Nyeri, highs of 25. 24 will be the high in a sunny Eldoret at 14. It's mostly sunny at 27 in Mombasa and 28 in Malindi. 19 and cloudy conditions in Kisumu. We'll see 16 and partly sunny conditions in Kakamega. At 20, Kampala is cloudy, and 26 cloudy in Dar es Salaam. 14 and mostly cloudy in Johannesburg, and 27 and cloudy in Lagos. We'll see highs of 33 in Kinshasa, where it's currently clear at 23. All right, we're getting into traffic hour and we're looking at traffic having built up coming on Gong Road at the junction with Karen. You get onto Gong Road proper and there's some traffic as you then try to approach the junction, and then Riara Road in through from Naivasha Road as well. Traffic is spilling over through towards James Gishuru. All right, that's not too bad. Where it is crazy this morning is on the Thika Superhighway. We have traffic coming in from Kiambu County at that junction, then from County 1 to County 2, Committee Road at that junction coming in from PCA, heavy traffic. The Northern Bypass taking off some of that traffic, getting onto Kiambu Road, that still continues. Coming in from United Nations Avenue, quite some as well. It's busy there. It's busy on Juja Road and Manyanja Road, as well as Kangunda Road, heading in from North Airport Road towards Outer Ring and touching a little bit on the Eastern Bypass. We're in traffic hour this morning and it's looking a little bit crazy. It's a bit slippery because of the rains overnight and likely to continue with a bit of a drizzle through the day. So please be careful as much as you can. Shout out what's going on where you are. If you are stuck, let us know. If you find a good route, let us know that as well. And we'll share on Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
Choose boldness. Celebrate the skin you're in and dress with confidence with Nivea Nourishing Cocoa Body Lotion. The triple layered care of deep moisture serum, precious cocoa butter, and vitamin E enriches your skin for 48 hours. Choose to wear your skin with pride with Nivea.
Easter Burudika na start time. Recharge your monthly subscription and get upgraded to the next high bouquet to enjoy more exciting entertainment for the entire family. Cartoons overload for kids, documentaries, sports, the best of African cinema, intriguing dramas, and local content,
wakati wa revenge umefika.
Plus action-packed movies for the whole family. Burudika na Star Times. Recharge your subscription today to the Aerial Classic Bouquet at only 899 shillings or Dish Smart Bouquet at only 999 shillings and get upgraded to the next higher bouquet for lots of laugh-out-loud moments with the family. On the road, link your decoder to the Star Times On app to make sure you don't miss a moment of your favorite shows on Star Times On. Star Times. Enjoy digital life.
Ding, 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 dong. Bum, bum, bum. Ding, dong, ding. Bum, bum.
And other counseling, we could be where I am today, actually. It was a wrong experience. And to me, like, even when I was in the house, I could, like, maybe my siblings, once they knock the door, I could tense. Maybe they are coming into me. But through that, the process of psychosocial support, counseling sessions, I was unable to heal. And, like, for where I'm working now, I go to Garissa, actually, I go to Samburu, I go for those areas where there is a lot of insecurity. And I'm ill for now, but it is a journey.
Sure.
It is a journey. It can maybe, it depends also with the individual. There are some who they can take the longer period, and others they can take the short period. Yeah.
What does it mean if you don't go through the psychosocial support, if you do not, de-stress? What happens? What are we looking at then in society where we have people who've gone through a traumatic experience like this and many others and then have not gone through the process of working it out?
Yeah. Okay, so fortunately, as human beings, we're pretty resilient in our own makeup, how we're created. And so if I can give you an illustration, if 100 people went through a severely traumatizing event, everybody's life will be changed, no doubt. I mean, from that day. However, in about 4 weeks, 85 people will actually go back to a semblance of normal life. They're probably going to, sleep better. They're going to avoid those places less. They're going to do all that stuff. But there's going to be 15 people. So that's about 15% of people whose lives are going to be completely, messed up. Now, in the event that you do not get any support, psychosocial support, that can actually be a lifelong disability. It actually will be Ndu not going to Westgate, which, by the way, we're in the same group. I actually went to Westgate once just because I had a friend come from abroad and they insisted that they were at Westgate. But then they didn't know I was involved in the recovery. They didn't know that I was already traumatized, so to speak, from it. So I had to enter it. And I remember going in there and I didn't even listen to them.
Yeah.
I was not listening to them.
You're constantly just...
I was on edge the whole time. But let me mention something, because I think it's important that Kenyans, even as we're listening to the idea of how do you recover from traumatic situations, and especially from the effects of a terror attack, that until 2015, I don't think the country had, when I say the country, I mean the system, the state had not really realized the role of what psychological support would have. However, from 2016, the government, through the National Counterterrorism Center, came up with what is called the National Strategy for Countering Violent Extremism. And in one of those pillars of the strategy, there is the psychosocial pillar. And it's very important for Kenyans to know that. And that's why if you go to their website, counterterrorism.go.ke, you can actually find a hotline which you can actually call if you actually experience something like that, and you can get psychosocial support. That's very important. It was never in place back then. And you can see it's a year later. So what I'm happy about is that I've seen an incremental increase in realizing that, that you need to get psychosocial support. And culturally anyway, I don't need to belabor the point that in Kenya we never used to think counseling or psychology was important. I mean, really. For guys, have a beer, you're good. The girls are like, but you're alive, you're fine.
Yeah.
But then you're the walking dead. That's what I call people who are walking around with psychological wounds that have not been taken care of. So for the 15 people who I talked about, if those 15 people do not go through any psychosocial support, we're looking at an increase in disability in ways that you can't actually understand. So you see an increase in alcoholism at work. You start seeing the newspaper headlines. You're seeing people taking their lives via suicide. All that. Those are all
it's trauma.
It's trauma and complex trauma at that. Because as Kenyans, we seem to go through traumatic things every day, but we never get any support for it. Let's start from colonization. Then you come out of that. You have freedom now. You think you're healed. You're not. You saw your parents being raped. You saw your people being castrated. You saw people being killed. You've never dealt with it as a country. We're the biggest land grabbers in the world. I always, when I've talked to people, there's no other part on earth you can go and tell people and boast to people about how many plots you have. Nowhere on earth. I can't go to New York today and tell, I have a plot in Kamulu, a plot in... Everyone's going, what are you talking about? But if you really think about it, if you think about the trauma of having your land taken away from you, it's like we're spending the rest of our time trying to claim it back. At a very psychological and deep level. Kenyans won't get that. Maybe this will be played in 50 years, they'll get what I just said. But that's what we're saying, that trauma has an effect that does not look like what we think it will look like.
And it then goes beyond generations.
It's multi-generational. Eric, our online behavior as Kenyans, we're the most rabid people online. Try to joke with a Kenyan online and see what happens. They will tear you apart. And I want to say is that we have all these pent-up issues in us, which start showing us anger. They start looking at dark humor. We think we're funny, but if you really think about it from a critical aspect, we make fun of sad situations. And that's, it's a way of coping.
That's our coping mechanism.
It's our coping mechanism because we're so traumatized as a people. You hear all these things that are happening, the economy, the political situation, all those things. Kenyans feel helpless. And that's another sign of psychological, when you're so traumatized, you actually start feeling helpless. So we have this land helplessness as a society where we think, okay, another scandal, so what?
Wow.
So on this, because then we already have a premise, we already have a foundation of trauma that we're dealing with.
Absolutely.
Then you add on to something.
Perfect. You implode. And that's why and you'll always hear people say, he used to be fine. This person was perfectly okay. They used to come to work okay. He has a family. He has 3 children. How could he do this? You just said it. The foundation was there. All that was needed was that last straw to break the camel's back. And unfortunately for us, even the way we've designed our society, it doesn't really lend us for social support. We think we're a social and communal society as Africans. But I think we're holding on to dreams of our fathers. We're not. We actually are not as communal as we used to be. If you really challenge Kenyans who live in gated communities and in estates, how many of us know our neighbors and take care of our neighbors? Or if you see a kid doing something on the road, you can call them out. We're really not as communal as we think we are. We want to be. We believe we were. But I know it might be controversial to say, but I don't think we are. And that's what we need to now get back to.
We lost it.
Yeah, because that could actually help ring fence and increase that resilience. The idea that if we watch out for each other, even if an enemy or anything happens to us, as a society, we actually tend to actually get better and get out of it a bit better.
What does a forensic psychologist do?
Apart from
No,
talking,
let me ask. No.
I know.
Well, the training,
Yes.
what exactly does it lean you towards? What is this thing that makes you what we refer to as a forensic psychologist?
Well, it's where psychology intersects with the criminal justice system. That's at the basic level. So all areas of the system, starting all the way from law enforcement, all the security apparatus, then going to detention, or what we call remand in Kenya, then the court system, then corrections. So if you look at the whole intersection and interplay of psychological processes in all of that, starting from the criminals and criminal minds and all that, all the way through, that's what we do, that's what we deal with.
So if you look at that and you go through the process of what brings about terrorism, what we like to refer to as radicalism, would you then say that perhaps people who are radicalized are also traumatized?
They actually, yes and no. But yes, especially for the ones who end up being activated. So for instance, if a young person in the community gets radicalized, which happens a lot, and we know what causes them to be radicalized, it's not being told that you're going to get 5 billion shillings at the end of the day. It's actually love and support, and somebody wanting to be like an older brother to you, and they come close to you. So what happens is they sell to you this idea of a utopian society. And they tell you that you can be part of that society and you're a valued member of that society. And once you join this society, for example, if you travel and go to another land where you're supposed to join this, let's say a caliphate or whatever it is, then when you land there, you realize that this is a bunch of criminals. And there's nothing like what they sold you. They're raping women, they're killing people for no reason, and they're putting you on the front line to go die, and they're not doing it themselves. And yet they're selling that as the ultimate price. So you end up being traumatized by that, and you go through what is called moral injury, because you thought you're going to actually do this cause, but then you get there and you find it's a completely different idea. So you get traumatized. And I also want to speak to the idea of the families of people who are radicalized. They get really traumatized. And I think when I was here in January, we were at we were right there in your sister station, and I remember we were talking about the effects of the 15th of January, the 14 Riverside attack, and the family members of some of the people there are people now we work with and we see, and the trauma, stigma associated with them and all that is something you cannot even calculate. You cannot actually measure, because they really had no idea. If you really think about your normal family member, then your son or your daughter gets radicalized, your brother, your sister, it really changes your life, because you live with that stain the rest of your life. People will say there's no, you didn't know, you probably even helped them, and really you're benefiting financially.
How could you not see the signs?
How could you not? And yet nobody is trained to see those signs systemically. And that's the next phase now, where we say, can we train society to understand when somebody is changing and is becoming radicalized? Because our trauma is there, yes.
I mean, PTSD, one relates to it when one watches movies and one thinks of people who have been in war.
Yes.
More so American movies that deal with the Iraqi war, the Afghanistan war, and so forth. But if we bring it back home and we look at our police service,
Perfect.
the way they go about their business, the way they are equipped to go about their business, or the lack or the absence of the equipment and the preparation they need to go about their business, and then the work that they're supposed to do and the work that they actually do. Does it not then fit this categorization that you've spoken of? And would one then not say that we have an entire group of people in this country who are constantly being traumatized?
I don't know, Bonamuga, if you know how profound what you've said is. We work with them and we've seen it. And I want you to imagine who a police officer or who a security officer in this country is. An 18-year-old lady or gentleman or 20-year-old who's been deployed to serve this country and to probably even lay their life for this country. But then when they go to work, there's a lot of challenges with the work. Of course, it is the work, but no human being is trained to die and trained to, and you're not trained to see some of the things
suffer.
and to suffer. And so there are many of them in the forefronts, and I know if they're listening to it, they'll be so happy that I'm speaking on their behalf. When I say that they do a lot of good work, but yet there's a lot of support they require that a lot of times they don't have. I'm sure even Rosemary, in interacting with some of the officers she interacted with, she saw, and yet they're even a bit better because they're KDF. But if now you're talking about the police officers and stuff, they're absolutely unshielded. They're out there doing work for this country. They're not sleeping, so we can actually have safety. But then the things they see on a day-to-day basis, they actually are the walking dead. I'm going to say that again in the sense of psychological trauma. However, I also want to commend the National Police for the things that they've put in place since about 2017, 2018, that have actually started, they have now a police hospital, I think, which they're going to be commissioning. They've also started the Directorate of Wellness, and the director is someone I know personally. I know they have a lot of counselors and psychologists who they're hiring now into the rank and file. They're also using the NPSC are actually using civilian psychologists to also help the police. So there's a few things and strides that are being made, but still there's a long way to go. And if I'm speaking about police, I also have to speak about prisons also, because they also get deployed in very difficult deployments, which Kenyans have no idea about. And that's why I was so happy when I saw Chief Justice Maraga being given a task force to actually look into their welfare. I hope that welfare and their recommendations will actually be put in place, because as a country, the idea of, you hear it everywhere, we write good documents, nobody implements them. But I hope that this is one that can be implemented, because the safety and security of this country relies on the wellness of our officers.
Kari, from a psychological perspective, as you're talking, I'm thinking about certain processes that we as Kenyans are known for. Task forces, committees, we form them very well. It's like we know, we understand, we need to look into this thing, and we do. Information gathered. Some even go to the point where they're analyzed, shelved. This we see consistently. Every time you talk of something, I can't even tell you, but that one, we even know what we need to do.
Yes.
Okay? How do we explain? Because this trauma we speak of, it isn't as though task forces upon task forces haven't talked about the wellness of the police service. They have. Correct. It isn't as though they haven't talked about reforming the prison services. They have. And yet, even with all the reports we have, and with successive governments, and then with successive political leadership, what is this thing that we keep inheriting in the political leadership and in our own personality as Kenyans that ensures we take the step of sorting out a problem, but we never sort it out? And it replicates. So it means we have a powder keg that we keep adding powder to. And somewhere along the line, I think at the back of my, we even know what will happen, but it still doesn't stop us. How do you explain a situation where you have an entire generation upon generation of people who see the abyss, they know they're heading towards it, and they keep accelerating towards it?
That's a hard one, and I think it's a systemic question. However, I also want to give examples of where it has actually worked. I was fortunate to be in the National Task Force for Mental Health that was appointed in 2019, and we did our work, collected views from Kenyans about what Kenyans require in terms of mental health and their wellness. And we came up with a report that was actually published, and it was launched in the middle of COVID. And what I want to say is that from that report, one of our key things we said when we were appointed, we said, like I said, I do not want to ever be appointed to anything in government which won't bear fruit. If the intention is to just have it as people who are just being seen there and then not actually help and serve Kenyans. So it was one of our demands from the word go. So what has happened is that from the recommendations of that task force, a lot of actually the recommendations are being actualized. A lot of the laws, right now, there's a push to repeal the penal code that actually criminalizes attempted suicide in the law. That is retrogressive in any way you look at it. So we want to see, is there a way to actually have that through a parliamentary process to get it out? Because it has to be repealed. You also have to think about There's a law on counselors and psychologists that was actually effected 2014, had never been actualized, was actualized finally last year as one of our recommendations. The Mental Health Board was also formed, the Mental Health Act that actually came into being 2022, I believe. So for me, there's a lot of steps, but the one lesson I've learned is that government can move very slowly because it's a behemoth that's huge. However, it is time for us as Kenyans to start doing it. And I agree with you. It seems like a land helplessness. It's like we do these really nice things academically, but then people don't follow up with action. And that is the problem. I think our land helplessness, we are numb to our situation and our situation. Here we can speak all the good English we want and analyze things to a T. But the normal Kenyan outside there says, wale ni watu wa masuti. The guys...
Doctor, it's puzzling. The things we talk about and recommend can be done.
Yes.
What hamstring? I mean, they can be done.
They can.
And it's
What do you think it is, City? Is it a psychological issue?
You know,
Is that why you're
I'll
heading?
pontificate on psychological issues when there's no psychologist. No. When there's a psychologist.
You will leave it at that. As we conclude, let's get back into the Garissa University. And Rosemary, so you went through the help of psychologists such as Dr. But then I can imagine you plus your colleagues who are fellow students, some lecturers. How about your family members? Because I can imagine what they went through as they're hearing, okay, there's an attack at Garissa University. They have no clue where you are. Did they get that support?
No. Yeah, the family
Should they?
was not. Yeah, they should.
Can I support her? Why? And then she'll get back to it. Rosemary, sorry to cut you short, but it's important. When somebody has gone through extreme trauma, they change. And family members need to understand that. That's the reason why. In fact, how I was involved in the support for Rosemary and her schoolmates was because I happened to meet the director for DAD in the country at a conference. And then he came very proudly and he told me, as the Germans, we are going to support, we're going to give the students a scholarship for 1 year and it's going to really help them. And I listened to him and I looked at him and I said, Doc, that's really great. First of all, I'm embarrassed that it's not the Kenyan government giving that scholarship.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. But second of all, have you considered that maybe you'll be sending zombies to class? He was completely floored. And then that's how I got in, because I said, psychologically, you've got to really help them in. And that's why it's important. Rosemary and other people like hers, families, need to be informed. What do you expect from her? How can you support her? Don't spend time around her. And I'm sure she got so many people asking, Miliona Nini, what happened?
Keeps asking those questions.
Yeah, you need to really stop all that and just be there for her as a person.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's important then that for us to understand that it's a journey. And it's not just, 2 years later. So you're okay. We moved on. You moved from Garissa, you went to Moi. So,
No.
It's like a continuous journey. But thank you very much, guys, for joining us today. Rosemary Chalo is a survivor of the Garissa University college attack 8 years ago. Dr. Oscar Gedua is a forensic psychologist. They've been here telling us that journey